When it comes to The Walking Dead, everyone's obsessed with zombie bites. But what if bites aren't actually how people catch the virus? Believe it or not, the truth turns this classic trope completely on its head. Before any bite happens, the infection is already inside everyone, lying dormant and waiting. Let's dive into why the bite is actually just the beginning of a much more complicated story. The bite transmits the virus. The biggest misconception about the Walking Dead virus is that you catch it from a walker bite. It's such a classic zombie trope that most viewers just assume the bite transmits the infection, causing you to turn, but turns out that's not how wildfire works at all. Before you roll your eyes, hear me out. The show actually makes it very clear that everyone is already infected with a latent airborne virus that doesn't kill or reanimate you on its own. The bite isn't the original infection. It's a secondary event called necrosis and sepsis. That's the deadly septic condition caused by the bacteria, viruses, and toxic debris introduced by the walker's bite or other wounds. The bite sets off a fatal immune response, but it doesn't give you the reanimation virus itself. The TS19 episode explains this distinction, showing how the wildfire virus stays dormant in everyone, while the bite causes the lethal infection that kills you before reanimation. Rick confirms later that we're all infected, so when people die, their reanimation is triggered no matter what killed them. It's not the bite that infects, but rather the cause of death, combined with latent infection that awakens the brainstem. You see this in action with characters like Shane and Randall, who both turn without ever being bitten. Shane was stabbed by Rick. Randall was killed by Shane with a blunt object. No walker bites involved, yet they both reanimate after death. Those moments prove that the virus is already inside everyone, waiting for death to hit the on switch. So why does the myth that the bite transmits the virus persist? Mainly because it's visually obvious and dramatically tense. Bites look gross, and the immediate fever they cause is the clearest sign of an infection going bad. So audiences naturally assume the bite means you caught the virus right then and there. Plus, every zombie story from Romero movies onwards uses the bite as infection mechanic, so it's a deeply embedded genre expectation. The show leans into that tension, making bite survival a major cliffhanger since it's the lethal secondary infection, not the latent virus. Scientifically, it makes sense to separate the two. The virus primes the brainstem for reanimation silently in everyone, while the bite delivers a cocktail of decomposing flesh bacteria that kills you fast through sepsis. That also explains why some people survive minor contact with walker fluids as long as they don't get bitten or scratched badly. The bite is about delivering that necrotic venom, not initiating infection. In short, the bite doesn't give you the virus. It triggers a fatal secondary condition in a body already silently infected. This two-stage model flips the classic bite equals infection trope on its head, but it fits perfectly with all the show's big reveals and story moments. If you think bites are scary, wait until you hear what walker guts and blood can do. Walker guts and blood are instant death. Everyone's seen it in zombie movies. You touch the monster's guts or blood and boom, instant infection, instant death. But The Walking Dead flips this script. The idea that any contact with walker blood or guts causes immediate necrosepsis just isn't true in canon. Survivors regularly smear themselves with walker innards to sneak through hordes, and they don't drop dead on the spot. Before you roll your eyes, hear me out. The show's first season gave us the iconic scene where Rick and Glenn cover themselves in walker guts in the episode Guts. That wasn't for shock. It was a tactical move to mask their scent from nearby walkers. They used decomposing flesh as camouflage without instantly getting infected. So just having zombie filth on your skin isn't automatically fatal. Here's the biology. Intact human skin is actually a solid barrier. It blocks all those decompositional bacteria and viruses from entering your bloodstream or tissues. The deadly necrosepsis that turns someone into a walker doesn't come from surface contact. It happens when those microbes get inside through bite wounds or open cuts. Your skin is basically a bouncer stopping the decomposer party crashers. Sure, this guts camouflage isn't without risk. Survivors never do it lightly. They grimace, gag, and only resort to it when they have no other choice, like sneaking through dense walker herds. Worst case, if you miss a tiny cut or get that blood in your eyes or mouth, necrotic bacteria flood your system and things go south fast. So it's risky, but a real survival tactic if used carefully. The longer a walker's decomposed, the nastier their microbial cocktail gets. Over time, bacteria multiply, potentially making contamination more dangerous if the pathogens get inside you. But that still requires bypassing your skin barrier, not just touching it. Survivors stick to weapons and bulky clothes to avoid sloppy contact. So why does the myth that any exposure equals instant death persist? Fear of rotten flesh is primal, and horror media often blurs the science for shock. People see guts and blood and assume everything inside is poison. Plus, fans sometimes confuse the visual gross out with actual infection routes. But the show consistently shows characters handling guts externally with no sudden illness. We see many times where characters get drenched in walker goo and survive hours or days afterward. Only bites or deep wounds trigger necrosepsis. The distinction between surface exposure and open wounds is critical, but but often lost in fan debates. Some call the Guts camouflage scenes illogical, but that's canon's way of showing a dangerous but real survival tactic. Ultimately, the myth that touching walker blood or guts is instant death is an exaggeration. It's a mix of natural revulsion and misunderstanding infection routes. Characters who risk the camouflage know exactly what they're up against, a slim but real chance of contamination if they mess up. It's a high-stakes balance, not an automatic killer on skin contact. But if wearing zombie entrails sounds gross and risky, wait until you hear where this nightmare started. The virus originated in a French lab. The idea that the wildfire virus started in a French laboratory is one of the most persistent misconceptions about The Walking Dead's outbreak. Fans often picture this mysterious biomedical facility as Ground Zero, the site where some mad science went horribly wrong and unleashed the apocalypse. But here's the thing, the French lab didn't create the original virus. It tinkered with variants, especially the so-called burners, which are just modified or mutated forms of the baseline pathogen. Before you roll your eyes thinking, typical conspiracy theory, hear me out. The World Beyond post-credit scene shows scientists at a French institute called La Biomédecine working on wildfire-related research. They're fiddling with the virus, trying to manipulate existing strains rather than inventing the core infection itself. These burners aren't the wildfire virus, it's more like a spin-off or side effect, engineered or evolved to behave differently, such as accelerating decomposition or being wildly corrosive to human flesh. Robert Kirkman, the series creator, has famously dodged questions about the virus's origin, making jokes about space spores to keep things deliberately vague. This isn't some oversight, it's a storytelling choice. Kirkman embraces mystery, focusing the narrative on how people survived the apocalypse rather than obsessing over the exact patient zero. Literally, no canonical line says the virus came from that lab in France. The CDC footage in Season 1 talks about weaponized smallpox and other nasty agents, but never connects wildfire's genesis to that. Yet the fandom often conflates French lab research with the virus's origin story. It's easy to see why. The lab scenes play up intense scientific experimentation with virus variants, so fans leap to the conclusion lab created everything. But the French facility's role is more about modification and variant creation than initial outbreak causation. The burners and other unusual walker types from French research are examples of how the virus's behavior can be engineered or influenced after the fact. Meanwhile, other parts of the United States show different regional variants born from mutation, not laboratory spills. So the pandemic wildfire we see everywhere is less a French lab accident and more a natural or unidentified event that spread globally before variant tinkering happened. In other words, the French lab is part of the virus's ongoing story but isn't where the wildfire virus itself first spilled into the world. It's a classic case of nuance lost in fan theories, turned into oversimplified lab origin headlines. The practical effect of all this? It keeps the Walking Dead virus shrouded in mystery, as Kirkman prefers. The focus remains on survival, community, and the human cost, not on neatly explaining a virus origin like a science documentary. That ambiguity has sustained fan interest for over a decade and remains a deliberate narrative choice. But if you think the virus's complicated French lab history is confusing, just wait until we dive into how literally everyone became infected in the first place. Everyone became infected simultaneously. Here's the thing, the world of The Walking Dead didn't turn overnight. The idea that everyone became infected with the wildfire virus at the exact same moment is wildly oversimplified. Instead, the infection spread quietly, like a wildfire, fittingly enough, moving through the air over weeks or even months without anyone realizing it. Before you dismiss this as just a slow-motion outbreak, hear me out. The virus's latent form is airborne and asymptomatic, meaning people carried it silently in their bloodstream and brain tissue long before symptoms or deaths started piling up. The series hints at this with the CDC's research and Dr. Jenner's explanation in Season 1, showing that the infection was already globally distributed by the time society collapsed. That's a far cry from the popular image of a sudden, citywide zombie apocalypse breaking out in a single day. Narrative compression, basically condensing a complex timeline into a few episodes, tricks us into thinking the collapse was instantaneous. But science and in-universe evidence tell a different story. A progressive, spreading infection moving through populations that eventually became universal. This also explains why there are no pockets of uninfected humans. If the virus had spread all at once, you'd expect isolated areas without infection. Instead, the show implies that everyone had been exposed for a while, allowing wildfire to silently saturate the globe before the chaos hit. The infection is everywhere, not because it hit everyone at once, but because it crept steadily through travel, contact, and airborne transmission until no one was left untouched. Digging deeper, the difference between latent infection and acute illness gets bungled all the time. The virus lurking in people's brains doesn't immediately cause death or turning. It waits, quiet and patient, until a bite or injury triggers necrosepsis, the deadly secondary infection that rapidly kills and causes reanimation. The timeline from exposure to actual walker symptoms after a bite can vary wildly, from hours to even days in some cases. That's not simultaneous infection. That's a ticking time bomb inside an already infected host. Spin-offs and later stories like Tales of the Walking Dead show us decades passing after the outbreak, with walkers still turning upon death. That's a huge clue the latent virus sticks around for generations, unchanging but always waiting to ignite. This persistent chronic infection model shatters the myth of a one-and-done global infection blast. So, the everyone got infected at the same second story? It's a myth born from misunderstanding how an epidemic like wildfire works and how TV storytelling condenses timelines. The truth is a slow-burn invasion, an infection spreading silently and invisibly beneath the surface until the entire world was unknowingly host to the virus, setting the stage for everything we see in the series. But if you think everyone being infected over time is surprising, wait until you hear about how quickly the dead actually turn once their heart stops beating. The dead turn instantly. Everyone thinks that in the Walking Dead universe, once you die, you snap into a walker right away, but that's not how it actually works. The truth is, reanimation timing varies wildly, from just a few minutes to several hours after death, and this variability is baked right into the show's biology and storytelling, and I can prove it. Most fans remember the jump scare scenes where a character dies and is crawling around as a walker in moments. It's cinematic gold, so those moments stick in your memory. But those quick turns are the exception, not the rule. Dr. Jenner's TS19 footage gives us our clearest canonical insight. He explains that the brain shuts down with death, but crucially, the brainstem reactivates afterward. This is a process, not an instant reboot. MRI scans in that episode show the brain going flat, then the brainstem coming back online minutes later. Jenner never says this happens immediately or uniformly, just that it happens reports in the lore and from official breakdowns put reanimation time anywhere from 3 minutes up to 8 hours post-mortem. So, if you thought someone biting the dust meant an instant zombie, turns out it's more like hitting the snooze button and waking up sometime later. Why the range? It makes sense biologically. How fast the virus reboots the brainstem depends heavily on viral load inside the host, their physiology, and environmental factors like temperature and humidity. A person who died in a warm, humid place with a high viral concentration might reanimate faster than someone in cold conditions or with lower viral levels. And here's where it gets weird from a storytelling angle. This delay builds suspense and emotional weight. Survivors often have a grace period after a loved one dies, a chance for last rites, acceptance, or desperate pleas before the corpse reanimates. The zombie apocalypse isn't always about instant horror, but the dread of that ticking clock. This delayed turning also interacts with decomposition. If a body reanimates slowly, early decay starts setting in, potentially weakening the walker or altering its strength and endurance. Decades later, this partly explains why walkers get scarcer and weaker. Bodies rot before they're up and walking. You'll notice the show uses quick turn scenes to punch up tension, like Shane or Randall's rapid reanimations, then contrast that with characters who lie dead for hours. It's a way to keep the stakes unpredictable. Fan debates sometimes clash on this point because the fast zombie scenes are so iconic that people generalize them as the norm. But the data shows otherwise. Reanimation is a variable event, not automatic or immediate. Narratively, it means that any corpse is a threat that could appear suddenly or several hours after death, forcing survivors to prioritize destroying brains quickly. But it also gives characters precious, poignant moments before that grim inevitability. So no, the dead don't turn instantly. They hit pause. The virus takes its time reactivating the brainstem, influenced by countless factors and adding depth to the world's horror. If you think variable timing is wild, wait until you learn about what happens when animals die and whether they can turn too. Animals can reanimate. You'd expect, with a virus this widespread and apocalyptic, that animals would be falling over dead and then reanimating as well. Dogs, birds, horses, zombie pets roaming the wasteland seems like a given in any undead horror scenario. But here's the kicker. There is no canonical evidence of any animal ever turning in the Walking Dead universe. None. Not a single reanimated squirrel or zombified cow has ever appeared on screen or in the comics. Before you roll your eyes, hear me out. Creator Robert Kirkman intentionally excluded zombie animals from the story. He said that the virus is human-specific by design, written that way to keep the narrative grounded and manageable. The world is apocalyptic enough with humans turning. Adding animal zombies would have complicated the story unnecessarily and shifted focus away from human survival and conflict. The biology behind this makes sense too. The wildfire virus likely targets neural structures unique unique to humans, specific receptors or brainstem pathways that animals don't possess in the same way. The infected human brainstem partially reactivates after death, allowing movement and rudimentary behavior, but this mechanism probably can't replicate in other species with different brain architectures. So animals may die, but they don't rise. Across every major installment, The Walking Dead, Fear the Walking Dead, World Beyond, even Tales of, no animals are ever depicted turning. You see horses die, wild animals hunted or struck down, but no reanimated animals prowling around. If animal zombification were part of the virus's effect, after decades of apocalypse and billions of dead creatures, undead animals would be everywhere. Their complete absence makes it clear that the virus's reanimation is limited to humans. Here's where it gets weird. Animals could still serve as virus reservoirs without showing signs of infection themselves. Some speculate that animals might carry latent wildfire without reanimating, much like asymptomatic human carriers carry the latent airborne virus. But crucially, there's no evidence that animals bite causing necrosepsis or zombie transformation. No animal bites ever lead to turning. That's strictly a human condition. Avoiding animal zombies also keeps the plot from spiraling into chaos. Imagine roaming zombie wolves, or swarms of undead birds. Stories would shift from the harrowing survival of people to fighting hordes of zombie wildlife. Kirkman's choice keeps the apocalypse brutal, but focused and human scale. Community consensus matches creator intent. Fans and lore keepers firmly reject the idea that animals reanimate in this universe, calling it one of the biggest zombie misconceptions imported from other media. Unlike the common trope seen in Resident Evil or 28 Days Later, The Walking Dead pulls back from the undead animals angle entirely, so when you hear talk about zombie dogs biting someone or skeletal horses galloping in the distance, you know to chalk that up to other zombie franchises or fan speculation. The wildfire virus is a human-only reanimator, designed around targeting the uniquely human brainstem circuitry, with animals unfortunately just left dead and gone. If that sounds anticlimactic, well, it's also what makes The Walking Dead's virus so eerily plausible. It's a virus that reinvents death in humans only, keeping animals as tragic but natural casualties instead of adding another layer of undead horror. But if you think zombie animals would twist your mind, wait until you hear about the actual brain state of walkers, because they're not exactly brain dead in the way most people assume. Walkers are completely brain dead. Walkers aren't the totally mindless brain dead corpses people assume. Before you say, yeah, zombies are brain dead, that's the point. Hear me out, and I can prove it. In the season 1 finale, TS19, Lori asks Dr. Jenner, it restarts the brain? And he deadpans, no, just the brain stem. Basically, it gets them up and moving. That's a direct canonical fact. The walkers' higher brain functions, the parts for memory, reasoning, and personality, are gone, but the brainstem and spinal cord stay active enough for movement and basic senses. Here's where it gets weird but logical. The brainstem controls essential functions like walking, grasping, biting, and reflexes. It also processes senses like hearing, smell, and touch. Walkers respond to loud noises, movements, or smells, and can navigate obstacles. They push doors aside and even clumsily climb, but they don't remember loved ones or plan attacks. No personality survives, no emotions, no thinking, just a creature driven by pure instinct and the virus forcing it to feed. Dr. Jenner's explanation matches neurological science perfectly. The brainstem is our oldest, most primitive nervous system part, handling automatic function. In walkers, it reactivates under the virus after death, while the cerebral cortex, the seat of consciousness, remains inactive. This explains why walkers move and detect prey, but are mindless by human standards. They're not dead brains animated magically. They have minimal neural activity limited to survival reflexes. Some variants mess with this baseline. Later seasons show walkers with enhanced speed, strength, reflexes. We see them open doors, navigate tricky terrain, even herd together. But these abilities still come from brainstem and midbrain activity, not a return of higher thought. None recognize friends or past events. These enhancements seem like neurological tweaks, virus mutations, or lab experiments. Yet the walkers remain instinct-driven, without consciousness. Fans notice scenes where walkers remember routes or mimic behaviors and wonder if any cognition survives. The official take is no. These are repeated environmental cues and strong sensory triggers, not real memory or learning. It's like a scratched record stuck on repeat, reflexes, not thinking. The myth that walkers are completely brain dead comes from simplified, mindless zombie horror cliches. Sure, the phrase works casually, but falls apart medically and canonically. Total brain death means zero electrical brain activity anywhere, irreversible loss. But walkers have a reactivated brainstem firing, which is the bare minimum for movement and sensation. The evidence is solid. TS19 shows CDC MRI scans proving brainstem reactivation. Dialogue spells it out plainly. Walker behavior requires neural circuits circuits. No nerves, no walking or biting. Enhanced variants keep this trait, just refine it. Both story and implied neurobiology show walkers as living creatures stripped to primal function, not dead brains. What does this mean for walkers? They're instinct-driven, reactive beings sustained by partial brain activity, not empty shells animated randomly. This flips the trope. It's not magic animating corpses, but a biological process reactivating ancient neural hardware to drive unthinking hunger. Walkers are alive, in a basic, stripped-down way. This insight unlocks the wildfire virus's true nature. It doesn't just kill and animate, it hijacks motor and sensory systems to keep itself going. That's both fascinating science and powerful storytelling. The brain-dead zombie myth falls apart under scrutiny, revealing a more complex, chilling reality. And that wraps up everything people get wrong about the Walking Dead virus. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.